Welcoming to Rage Against the Mainstream podcast for the first time, our new friend, Vic from Eclipsica. How's it going, man?
Hey, doing good. What about you?
I can't complain, you know.
Good.
Well, at least for me, I like cold weather, so it's starting to get nice and chilly here in New Jersey. I mean, I don't know how it
We
is
don't
out
have
there
the
on the West
problem.
Coast.
We don't have that problem. It's never cold here.
Nice. So, for those listeners or viewers that don't know, you're in Eclipsica. Obviously,
Correct.
you know, if we have watchers and listeners of the show, then obviously they know who Danny and Marky are. You're one of the other 5 in the band.
Yep.
So,
One of them.
give us a little backstory. Who are you? Where'd you come from? What do you do? Just
All right. So I'm Vic. So I'm a lead guitar player in Eclipsica since 2018. I'm not from here. I'm not from LA. I'm not from the US. I'm from Europe. I'm from France. I'm sorry about that. So I moved to the US in 2012. I actually moved to Boston because I was studying at the Berklee College of Music. I did like a few semesters there when I just realized I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to become a teacher. I don't want to teach music. It's not, it's fun, but I was like, I want to perform. And good thing about Berkeley, it's like all the professors are musicians, and many of them told me the same advice. Were like, we shouldn't tell you that, but go to LA and just play there. It's like that's where the thing is. And I like challenges. I guess that's why I moved to the US because it's like I'd rather be average among the best than the best among bad
exactly.
musician. So I was like, you know what, worst case, people would tell me like, hey, you suck, get the fuck out of here, and I'll be like, yeah, cool, no problem. But so far, it's like no one told me to stop, and so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna keep going. And I guess finding a band is the same if it's the US, Europe, France, anywhere. It's like you need to find people that you can click with, that you can be like, okay, we can go to war together.
So, how did you find your way into the Eclipsica camp?
I found randomly, to the band.
Yeah. How'd you wind up getting into that whole like? How did you find those guys? Did Danny and Marky like come out of like a fog and was like, "Hey, man, come over here"?
Yeah, in dark alley at midnight. Like,
hey, man, you like Pearl Jam?
It was. Yeah, it was not that epic. I wish it was in prison. No, I'm just kidding. It was like on Craigslist. It's like I sent, posts, and so for some reason, it's like when you respond to many ads on Craigslist, you can figure out which one is shitty and which one is not. And I found this one, and I was like, oh, it's interesting. I send, I guess, an email, and I guess it's Mark will get back to me pretty quickly. So I was like, okay, cool. So I actually looking for someone. We decided like a time to meet, like just probably like within like a week. I met them. So I only met when I met them. I met Mark, Marky, Danny, and it was a previous guitar player, another one. And it clicked, right away. It's like Mark and I were like a lot of stuff in common, which is could be music or like all the stuff. With Danny, it's all the stuff. So it's like I quickly knew I was like, oh, cool, those guys. I can hang with them. It's gonna be fun. It's like not that I didn't care about the music level or anything, but I was like, I know it can work. When sometimes many musicians we've been in bands when you play with amazing musicians, but they're awful people, and you're like they take away that feeling of I want to do music. You're just like this guy is shitty. I don't want to do this. When for them it was the opposite. It was like, okay, cool. We're gonna have band practice. We're gonna play. That's cool. But we're gonna hang and doing this is happening. In my case, it has to be like, okay, I want to be productive. I want to be creative. So I guess that was a big thing for me.
Yeah, and that's the thing too that most people don't get it. It's like, yeah, you could have a band full of great musicians, and they could be the best, but if they don't vibe, then you have nothing. Like, you know, you could have a band of the
It's
greatest musicians of all time, but if they're
it's
not
useless.
cool with each other, then that's just it.
I mean, it's useless. Like, I mean, like I said, like I think we all had the experience when you're like, wow, this guy is really, really good, but fuck, I don't want to work with him. This guy is just like, you know, it's like at some point he's just like taking away the pleasure. And I feel like that's something because I also teach on the side. I always tell my students, if you don't have any pleasure when you practice, when you take your instrument, like don't do it.
Yeah.
Like honestly, like you're just gonna present against your own instrument. And I'm someone who's big about, you know, with positive reinforcement. So I'm like, if I do something when I'm not feeling good or down, I rather not do it because I'm like, then I don't want to have the memory of like, oh yeah, one day I did it and it was like really shitty. I'm like, I mean, to me it works. I know some people who just like push through, and I don't know if it works. For some, maybe it works, but I feel like for mostly, you know, most like a lot of people, like I see it with my students, it works for a time, but after a while, they'll give up, and I don't want that.
Yeah, exactly. So, I guess when did you start playing guitar? Well, you know, how old were you? You know, how long have you been playing for? Like that whole thing.
Um, I started to play guitar when I was like probably 13, 14. You know, it wasn't like I'd never had a music lesson in my life because I knew it wouldn't work. I was the kind of kid, you know, it's like if you just say, if you just tell your kid like, oh, you're gonna go to school for music and everything will be like, fuck it, you know, it's like I was like, I've been up school. But I was like, okay, it's interesting. I've seen a gig or two, and I saw like, I don't know why the guitar was the instrument I was like looking at, even if I really like the drums, but I think it was more like, oh, because it's fun, you know, the guy is hitting everything.
Oh
But
yeah.
the guitar was really interesting to me, and so I was like, I don't want to take lesson. I come from a very, you know, modest family, so music lesson in France like extremely expensive, and also based on the classical system, when you don't touch your instrument for almost a year. And I was like, no, I was like, no, it's like you know, it's like I don't want to do this. And it's classical music or it's jazz music, and I feel like our generation is not, you know, like didn't grow up with this. You know, when I see like you see like all those teachers in music colleges, you know, it could be UCLA, Berkeley, they love jazz, but that was a music when they were learning music. That was the cool stuff to on the radio. Not for us. For us, it was like rock, metal, and stuff like that. So I remember like that my mother. I mean, like I said, no one is playing music in my family, but somehow we had like an old guitar with you know the action being you know that on the fretboard, you know.
We've all had
Which
one.
yeah, and I feel you need to go through that. And so there is like a French version of the Guitar World magazine, and it was you know same as the one in the US, but the one in France came with the CD. It's like you could hear like for example the rock lesson, shred lesson, and everything, and you could hear the backing track and stuff. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And I was like, I don't want to learn like side reading, you know, but I saw like tabs, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm dumb. I can understand that. That's cool. And I think you know it's like that's the thing. You know, when you're young, I compare this to the fact that I moved to the US. You know, I will talk about this later, but you don't think about like, oh, it's gonna be too hard. It's gonna be impossible. You know, you're so young, and you're just like, I can do that. You know, you look at a solo that it's way too hard for you, but you just look at me like, I can do it, even though you're like, no, that's not possible. And that's something I really liked with you know, when you start something like you have no idea, and you are kind of stupid about it, and you just like, oh, I'm gonna do it. And I feel like that's what happened. I was all the time. Um, I had to deal with my parents. They were like, hey, listen, you need to be like the top, so you can keep playing music. And by doing this, then you meet one person, you're like, hey, come in my band. The band sucks. You know, I remember the first step we did is to make a cover of Metallica in middle school. Worst thing ever. You know, it's like I feel like they could have sued us for that shit. You know, it was so bad. Then you meet somebody else, you're like, hey, my band is a little bit better. Come in the band. And then by doing this, then you start to meet people who are a little bit more, you know, like professional and stuff. And yeah, then you know, it's like I remember like in high school being half playing music and half doing, you know, being in high school.
Yeah.
And I was because I knew what I wanted to do. I was like, I know that I want to do this, and you have to it's like I think it's important you have to listen to all the naysayers being like, no, it's impossible, you cannot do that, especially in France compared to the US, because music is not something big in the French culture. It's like when you go to UK, when you go to Germany, the US, music is a part of the culture. When in France, not really. It's like it's quite different. So it's like, but I was glad to listen all those people being like, oh, you cannot do it. But I don't know, I was smart enough to tell them like, oh, but do you know anything about music? No. All right, so shut the fuck up if you don't know. It's like, I'm not gonna start to talk to someone about the subject I don't know. Be like, hey, I want to be a doctor. I'm like, hey, but it's like, and someone would tell me like, have you done med school? No. So why are you talking about something you don't know? And for me, this was the same thing. I was like, all right, I probably have to work twice harder. So it's like, that's how I started. Also, when I was like 15, 16, I started like to contact famous musicians, like in France, and being like, hey, just give me advice. I'm not asking you to give me like a job or anything. Just tell me, what have you done to reach like your goal. And it was scary and fun at the same time because no one has the same answer. So I'm gonna be like, for me it was like this. It's like one day I was on TV and suddenly people saw me and producers, and some people were like, well, it's like for like 15 years, it was hard. And I was like, all right, let's see, like we see what's going on. So that was pretty much, I feel like, where you are, where can be anywhere in the world. I feel like when you begin to start an instrument, it's always the same thing. We always start the same way. Like there is no like.
Yeah, exactly. So starting out, who were some of those influences, or what made you want to pick up guitar?
So one of the first thing I heard was like Eruption by Eddie Van Halen. 'Cause I remember on the guitar magazine, it was they were putting the song Free Eruption. And I remember trying to, because we all do this, we try to do it by ear. And I tried to do this, and I was like, what the fuck? I was like, how is he like reaching some notes? And I remember like trying, I was like, it's like, I could read some stuff. I was really good at, like being able like to extending like, my fingers. And, you know, maybe like 5 or 6 months later, I was invited to a birthday party in my middle school. And I didn't give a shit about that guy. But so they had MTV, so I was like, MTV is cool. I was like, it's like it's Skittle, or like it's we're gonna see some cool stuff. So I remember like them doing the birthday party stupid stuff, and I was watching MTV, and it was like next Van Halen Eruption live. I was like, God, I'm gonna see that guy doing it, and I was happy and sad when I saw him just putting his guitar like this and start doing some tapping, and I was like, that's it. I was like, shit, I wasted, like months of doing this. But actually, I realized, okay, no, that's another good thing. So I would say like Cave and I was the first one. Also Zach Wild. I think like Zach Wild was just like one of my favorites. It's like just the way he was like doing his vibratos when you see like all
Oh
the
my
guitar players
god.
work. And I was like, damn, I was like, I want to do this. And it's like the way, I mean, he was doing almost like everything that when you looked at guitar teachers were like, oh, you shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that. And him, he was just like, nah, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. Like he was holding his hand, he was playing like gypsy jazz players when he was not touching the body.
Yeah.
Like he was doing like super wide vibratos, and I was like, okay, cool. I want to, that guy is probably like the answer. So I feel like those guys, I wasn't like a fan, like most of people like Led Zeppelin or Metallica. Like I liked those stuff, but they were not stuff that was like, oh, I love it. I was just like, cool. But I liked, I guess, like modern stuff. Like so, it's like I would say like Zach Wild and John Five. John Five was also like somebody like I really really liked. I remember like as it's like as a young guitar player, you start to be like snobby, and I was like, oh, there's a guy playing for Marilyn Manson. I was like, it's just like cold, like power chords and stuff. And somebody was like, no, listen to it. And I listened, and I guess the first song I heard was like Damage. I don't know if you know this one by
Maybe.
John Five. It started with like a little lick, like super like quick, and I was like, oh, shit. And also like his sense of melodies. I was like, wow, you can do like actually like you can shred, but also have a sense of melody. And I was like, okay, cool. So I would say those three guys were like like yeah, the main guitar players that made me want, okay, like I want to do this.
See, it's funny because all three of them are very different, but they're also
Yeah,
extremely similar too in their styles of
yeah,
playing. Like, you know, you
yeah.
have like it's almost like they have like a no rules type approach to their playing. Like obviously Eddie Van Halen didn't know anything about music theory, didn't know anything about it,
Yeah, yeah,
didn't
yeah.
want to know anything about it. Then you had Zach Wild that was, you know, like the pentatonic guy, but he could also, you know, did like the chicken picking and all that other stuff, and he was just like an entirely different player. Then you have John Five, who is kind of like the best of both worlds of those two guitar players.
Yep.
But he also has like the heavier aspect of it too. And it's funny you brought those three up because those are my top three guitar players as well. I think I'd have to put like a notable mention like Jake E. Lee. Hey, I think he's an unsung
Yes,
Aussie guy that no one ever talks about.
that's
But
true. That's true.
yeah, and it's funny too going back to Eruption. I say it all the time. Everyone remembers the first time they heard Eruption.
Yeah, I think it's true. It's true. We all remember. I remember. I can picture exactly where I were in my bedroom, being like, "Oh shit!" I was like, "We can do that." Like same thing when I mean, I don't know for you, but the first time you see somebody doing a sweep, you know, sweep like a real
Oh
sweep,
yeah.
like a big one, we all remember. You're like, oh, wait, what? Like, okay, I didn't get that. And you know, it's like you said, like those three guitar players, you know, were really good to help to discover all the stuff. You know, it's like they don't have any problems being like, hey, when I do that, I got inspired by this. And, you know, I like being curious, being like, okay, you know, I remember exactly talking a lot about Randy Rhodes. And I was like, okay, let me check this guy out. And being like, oh, okay, cool. Like a new word. Then Helen, it was like, I don't remember, I guess he was talking about Tommy Young. Um, John Five was talking about Jerry Reed. You know, even if it's not metal or anything, but like when you listen to some Jerry Reed or even like Les Paul or you know, it's like, and it's really funny when you see like those different words, but you see the explanation and it comes like as one. Like I always use that example. Like when I teach music, I have a student and he plays like gypsy jazz music, and he wanted to know some diminish, and I remember like I was like 16 or 17. I think I played a show, and it was like, you know, the show when you have like a metal band, then suddenly it's a reggae band, then it's
Yeah.
you know, it's like it's so different. You know, it's like every band's going one after the other. And I saw that Gypsy guys, you know, just a jazz player, and I was like, hey, show me how you think about diminished chords. And I remember him showing me, and I was like, "Wait, that's the same thing, except your approach is a little bit different." So it's like that showed me, like, okay, like everything actually, like it's not like oh, just metal or just rock or just funk. And I like those guitar players. That's why I feel like John Five was good, like to bring back two words together and being like that's possible. You know, it's like people would just listen to like some like yeah, country. Like when I talk about country, I'm talking about like, you know, Jerry Reed, you know, style, like super fast chicken picking. They can listen to me like, okay, cool. And people just doing metal, looking at that, being like, yeah, it's cool. And that's why I feel like John Five is very underrated. You know, it's like I feel like we we appreciate him, but it's like these guys doing a lot
Hmm.
like, for the guitar world is really pushing stuff. Like a lot of guitar players starting to play chicken picking. They would have probably, but I feel like the one who really made it like, okay, that's cool to play it was John Five. I'm sure about that.
Well, that's the thing too. Like you listen to like the first album that Zach Wild did with Ozzy, No Rest for the Wicked, and you hear like the solo for like Devil's Daughter. And like I remember the
Yes.
first time I heard that, I'm like, yeah, I'm like before I even knew anything about anything about guitar, I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
And then you know you come to find out that it's chicken picking, and you're just like, you know, like where it had come from. It's like there's no way that this has a place in this type of music, but
Yeah.
like he's just one of those guys that's able to make it happen. And the other thing too that I feel like people don't understand is Zach Wild's more than just the pentatonic and
Oh
harmonic
yeah.
squeal guy. Like he is a
Oh yeah.
lot better than people give him credit for. Like, you
Oh
listen
yeah.
to
I
like the
mean, you
Pride
know,
and Glory stuff and even Black Label Society, most of the Ozzy albums and stuff. I mean, the dude sat
yeah,
in with the Allman Brothers.
yeah. I mean, I think I don't know. I think I've seen some footage when he had a band and it was like a cover of Leonard Skinner, and
Yeah.
it was just like was just like ripping the songs, and I was like, God damn it! I was like, I mean, and it's funny because like you hear Black White playing when he was young, everything is already there. Like he's playing, like his accent,
Hmm.
like every licks and everything is already there. And it's just like when people are just like, well, I remember seeing some people commenting, and it was stupid. They were like, well, the guy's been 30, 20 years and he's still at the same level. And it's like no, it's like he's being able like to change the dynamics and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's important.
I think it was what was it? He did something with Loudwire or something recently, and it was like he was talking about getting his start with Ozzy, and he's like, I can't do tapping because that's Van Halen. I can't do classical because that's Randy Rhoads. I can't do this because of this guy, and I can't sweep because of Ingve and stuff like this. And he said, he basically just he how he explained it was he had a box of crayons and took the 52 colors, threw them all away, and was left with four. And that's how he basically came up with his style. And I was like, man, that's like the funniest shit I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. And again, it's like when you hear people being like, "Oh, it's only pentatonic. You cannot do much with it." You're like, listen to Zach White and tell me that you feel like he sounds the same. He never sounds the same. Many times I have to see videos of him and being like, "No, that's still pentatonic," but somehow he's making it sound like super exotic and interesting.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, to be able to play at his like level and his speed with that kind of stuff.
God,
I mean,
I,
I've had the pleasure of seeing him live a couple times, and it's just like it's mind blowing when you like
yeah,
see that shit in person. You're like, okay, so this is real. Like this is
yeah,
a
I've
real
seen,
guy.
yeah, I've seen him too, and like you, it's impressive. It's really impressive. Like, I mean, already like the guy is impressive physically. Like he's a big guy, and you're
Yeah,
like, oh shit, I don't want to like boo him or anything. And he's just like he just doesn't give a shit about his guitar. I like it. It's like many times I tell my students, I'm like, come on, don't treat your guitar like it's a little flower. It's like just it's like for some dynamics you need to go into it. And him is
yeah.
a perfect definition of like I don't give a fuck. It's like if a string breaks, it's okay. And that's I like guitar players like this. I feel like the same with John Five. I don't know if you've seen him live. Like I feel like this guy is impressive too. Live is really yeah, it's quite impressive.
I saw John Five back in 2008. He was playing with Rob Zombie, and that was the
Okay.
first time I'd ever even heard of John Five. And I'm like, he talk about another like versatile guy. Like you
Hmm.
hear, you know, like the Devil's Rejects song, and then goes into like pretty much anything from the White Zombie catalog and all
Yeah.
the Rob Zombie catalog and everything. And then you watch like the videos, and he's sitting there playing hee haw and shit. And it's just like, like this dude, he's a force to
Yeah.
be
No.
reckoned with.
Oh yeah.
It's
No. No.
surprising that more people don't talk about him.
Yeah, and I'm always surprised. It's like I mean, I never had a chance to talk with him, but I'm pretty sure like it's like all as guitar players, we like to compare ourselves to other guitar players. We like to watch all the guitar videos of guitar players, and that's how sometimes we get like, oh fuck, it's like I sound like shit and everything. I'm pretty sure like guys like John Five, Zach White, they probably appreciated it. Just watch one or two, but they mainly focus on themselves. Just like I'm just gonna focus on my sound instead of just like, oh, I heard this guy. And it's like right now, it's like everyone is listening to Tim Henson from Polyphia. Everyone wants to sound like him. It's like, and
Hmm.
it's just like cool, but there is only one Tim Henson. It's like as much as you want to copy, as it's like try to do like some Van Halen tapping licks. You will sound tacky. We will sound tacky. When Eddie was doing it, sounds amazing. And it's just like there's some stuff when you just like that's a guy signature. You cannot steal it. It's like develop your own stuff. And I feel like those guys, they had this intelligence to be like, okay, cool, I like that. I'm gonna get inspired, but I'm gonna have my own sound. And that's why you hear John Five playing, you recognize him right away. Zach White right away. Same with Van Halen. It's like a lot of guitar players you can recognize them, and I feel like when you can recognize, even if he's not, for example, even if he's not like really technically amazing, The Edge from YouTube. You hear
Yeah.
like two notes, you hear it's him, right away. I think it was like Guthrie Govan, who did a video called like who's the best. I don't know if you heard about this video.
I
Like
didn't hear the video, but I'm familiar with Guthrie Govan.
so Guthrie was working for a guitar magazine in the UK, and I guess he was trying to respond to the answer to the question, "Who's the best guitar player?" And he took a backing track and just like copied the sound and style of many guitar players. And honestly, you don't even need to be like, "Oh, who is this?" I need to do some research. You recognize right away. You have Gilmer, you have like Pete Townsend, you have all those guys, and you're like, damn. I mean, you have Zach Wild, you have Hendrix, and that's something I'm like, that's true. Like those guys, you can really, really recognize. That's a thing. Being a good guitar player is great, but being also like someone with your own signature, I feel like that's the final step, and
Yeah.
it's unfortunately, it doesn't happen a lot. It's like, and it doesn't, and especially now because like everyone wants to sound like everyone else. Like I said, it's like on Instagram, I mean, when I was still on Instagram, I remember like all the guitar videos that I could see was people just being like trying to copy like a Polyphia song. It's like trying to be like, oh, compose a song, and you're like, yeah, cool, but it's like, it's like Tim Henson does better. It's like, why should I listen to you? So,
So I want to get back to you here for a little bit. What prompted the move to the United States?
um, so liking all the guitar players, as I said, like I was a big fan of, became a big fan of Nuno from Betancourt from Extreme. Like, love that guy. For me, he's the last guitar hero. Like, honestly, you cannot tell me he's not. He's the last guitar hero. And of course, I said to love Dream Theater. Like, I really like Dream Theater. And it's like I remember at that time many people were like, "Oh, John Petrucci," it's like it's too much. And same for Mike Portnoy.
Yeah.
They're my two favorite in the band. For me, that Portnoy and Petrucci are my favorite. And I remember, like I told you, I was still reading this French guitar magazine, the Guitar World version, and I was always reading that. Okay, these guys were studying at Berkeley, and I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. And like I said, you're young, you're stupid, and I didn't think like, okay, I don't speak English, I don't have the sounds for that, because as you can imagine, in France and mostly in Europe, everything is free when you go to college. Like you don't have to pay, or like if you have to pay a tuition, quite cheap. And but I did apply to Berkeley, and somehow they accepted me. And I never been to the U.S. before. I
Oh
never been
wow.
to the U.S. Yeah, I was just like, what, just like I remember having like two suitcases. Um, I always tell that to people when they ask me like, "Oh, was it tough?" I remember taking a plane from Paris to Iceland, and it was fine. And then it was like in the terminal going to the US, and sitting, waiting, in the boarding, we're boarding, and I remember like just hearing Americans around me, and I was like, "Fuck, I don't understand shit." I was like, I do not. I was like, they talk. I know that they're speaking English, but I cannot, you know. And I was thinking like maybe it's a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. I was like, I should have learned English a little bit more before coming. And but as soon as I put like one foot in Boston, I was like, that's it. I want to stay here. I was like, there's no way. I was like, I remember landing on a Saturday evening, and I was studying Berkeley on a Monday morning. And yeah, I remember my first class was just like I said, like I was feeling like I was like, if the guy is asking me one question, I don't know what to say. I was like, I'm just gonna say yes. It's like I remember it was arrangement, class, and I was feeling like I would never get it, but I feel like I got lucky. I got extremely lucky because I had people around me. Because first of all, I think Americans are the nicest people. Like if I compare to people in Europe, Americans are like by far the nicest people. They are willing to help you. Like in France, when you're like, yeah, I'm in trouble. Like, yeah, good luck. Uh, and also like the French community is not that big. I feel like if you come from Mexico, if you come from I don't know, like Brazil, the community are pretty big in India. They're pretty big in almost every major cities. When you're French now, it's like this community is probably small, and I didn't want to be around any French people. I was like, I don't want to speak French. I was like, if I moved here, I'd speak English. And when you have no one to talk to, well, you have to adapt. I wish people said, everyone in America was like, hey, we can learn French for you, don't worry. But it doesn't work like this. So I was like, that's me who has to, adapt to everything. And it was scary but fun at the same time because nothing is the same. Like literally nothing is the same. And it's also like small things that you don't really think about. It's like when you go to a grocery store, like, oh, I'm gonna get some food, and suddenly you're like, I don't recognize anything. Like nothing is the same. It's like the culture is different. Um, and like I said to people when they're like, hey, if I move to the US, should my English be perfect? I'm like, well, you should know how to speak like the English that people are speaking every day. Because I remember like at Berkeley, giving a paper like after 2 or 3 days over there. So it's like, yeah, I've been in the US for less than a week, and I gave a paper back, and my teacher was like, "You all set?" I was like, "What the fuck does it mean?" It's like it's not something that you learn at school. On you, I was
Yeah.
like, and it's like it makes you feel like shit. You feel like, okay, like I'm really bad because even something that small I cannot understand. But at the same time, it's like learning guitar. You're just like, okay, like I have so many things to learn. Either you can take it as, okay, I'm gonna give up. It's too much, or you can be like, cool, I will never be bored. I will always have something to learn. So that was, the reason was just I was like I told you, the best are going there. All right, I'd rather fail over there than being successful in France and just become bitter, being like, oh, I should have done that. Like I hate people like this. People will tell you all the time when you tell them like, for example, I'm doing a podcast. Oh, I could have done a podcast, but and they always find a reason, and you're like, yeah, do it then. It's like you're just scared. It's like that's the easiest thing to do is to start, but at the same time, the hardest. So, like I said, I think I was stupid enough to be like, okay, let's do it.
Well, that, some of the best things come from rash decisions like that.
Yeah.
So, what prompted the move to California? Was it just like the next logical step, or it was like, okay, well, this is what I want to do. I'm completed in the school, and you go to California if you want to be famous.
I think it was a mix of both. It's like as a kid, I always grew up being like, oh, living in LA is a dream. It's like we don't know why, but you've been told like if you live in LA, you made it.
Yeah.
And also like spending. I don't know. Have you spent like some winter in Boston? It's
I've been up there
I,
around, late fall.
yeah. So I was like, I cannot do that. I was like, I'm cold as fuck. I was like, I want to be warm. I was like, I want to be super warm. And like I said, my professors at Berkeley were like, go over there. Well, like the whole industry, in what you want to do is over there. If you want to do jazz, go in New York City. But I was like, I want to do jazz. And they were like, go in LA. They were like, it's tough. But again, it's like them telling me like, that's the hardest. I was like, oh, cool, I'm gonna go there. I might fail, maybe I will fail, but it's like I don't want to. I don't want just to be like, oh no, I'm not gonna try because it's like then you never know. At least you try, and I feel like it's not like either you make it or you don't make it. It's just like your mindset, your motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are like plenty of amazing guitar players or like a musician in general. The only difference is just like people who are getting hit and they just stand up and come back and be like, yeah, it's okay. I still want some. It's like, and I feel like that's extremely important. Like I always use that as a mirror with I'm a kickboxer. I've been doing kickboxing for like years and years. And again, that's the best kickboxer is not the one with the best technique. It's the one like getting hit and still coming back. There is nothing worse fighting someone that you punch for like a round and kick, and the guy is still coming at you back. Okay, there is nothing I can do. Like this guy is too motivated, and I feel like that's the same thing in music.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure if you take all famous musicians, they all went through like bad moments when they were like, I have to pay bill, I can, some bills, I have to give up some bands and stuff like this. But they still, decided like let's push through, and that's something unfortunately like we don't talk enough. Like it's not about how hard you work, but like your mindset.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something they all have in common, like a strong mindset. Because we all had experience of like being on stage or being in studio and you suck and you look like you really like it's really bad. You give a bad impression to people. Like people look at you being like, oh, and I feel like they all know that. You know, it's like I would, I mean, I would love as some famous musician being like, hey, what's your most embarrassing moment? I'm pretty sure they all have, more than one. They have a lot. But the thing is, like, they didn't let that event telling them like, okay, I suck. No, they were just like, oh, cool. I mean, like, I have room for improvement.
Yeah.
And that's always something that I try to work on because it's easy, especially nowadays, with like Instagram, with social media and stuff. You can easily be like, lose motivation,
Yeah.
because you're like, okay, this guy is like 5 and he can play way better than me. And it's like, but you need to really like take a step back and being like, all right, that's this guy, that his history. Like, when people are just like, oh, it's like I'm 25, I'm 26. At that time, this guy was already doing this, and I'm like, wow, if you think like that you will never be like, really happy with what you're doing. It's you. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't think that the guy you compare yourself to was comparing himself to anyone else. So
Well,
I feel like that's something.
for reference, Eddie Van Halen created and recorded Eruption at 23 years old. So
Exactly.
and he came up with that shit out of thin air.
I mean, even like, for more impressive, Jason Baker.
Oh yeah.
Baker, like by 19, this guy was just like already like, like a god. It's like I don't like using that word, but it was like extremely amazing.
If he would have had a couple more years, he would have been considered the greatest of all time.
Oh yeah, I mean, there is no reason why you see like every guitar players want to go meet him, and kind of, it's almost like I want to have your blessing. It's like it's kind of like that, and it's always sad. I'm always sad when I see like Justin Baker because I'm like, that was a waste, and you cannot blame anyone.
No.
It's like you have some guitar players who like died in a freak accident or anything, and him is just like, and I'm always impressed by like his motivation, his mindset.
Oh yeah.
Like Jason is like is a legend, not only like as a musician, but like I don't know. I would say like honestly, like 99% of people in this world would be like, okay, just let me go. I don't want to like this, and you couldn't blame them. But him is like an example to people being like, you can still live. You can. He does music. It's like it's a different thing, but it's impressive.
Did you ever watch his documentary, Not Dead Yet?
Yes.
Yeah, it was so good. Oh my god, it was amazing. There was a video that surfaced on the internet recently of Eddie Van Halen meeting Jason Becker in person and giving him a Wolfgang guitar. Yeah, you have to search that up on YouTube. I think it's just like EVH meets Jason Becker or something. It's like one of those like, oh my god, like come to Jesus type moments.
Yeah. Oh wow, I have to see that because I feel like it's like Eddie Van Halen as well is somebody who were like extremely important in the guitar world. It's like I know it sounds cliche, but I feel like Jimmy is the one who just started everything. It's like it's funny because like I never, like I told you, people are just like, oh, when you start guitar, it has to be Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Led Zeppelin. And I was like, no, I want to do this. I like to listen to like modern, I mean at that time modern stuff like Children of Bottom, bands like that.
Alexi, he's another great guitar player.
That was for me like not a big loss, but I feel like our generation, we didn't really grow up with Eddie, but we grew up having Alex being like the guy. And for me, like when I heard that he passed away, I was like, oh wow, that's a big thing. Like for me, it was really a big thing. I remember listening to like his solo stuff and his music a lot. But yeah, wait, I lost what I was going to tell you. I forgot. But me getting old, it's like just to have white hair and forget stuff.
Well, that's usually what happens on this podcast anyway.
That's good. But yeah, I know it's like all those, like Eddie was like, oh yeah, Eddie was like somebody extremely important. Like Jimmy, I really started to listen to Jimmy when I was 18 by myself, and I knew that I wouldn't be like kind of like corrupt by people, or like we have to be like, oh, Jimmy's a god. And when you ask them why, they just like paraphrase something they heard in a movie
Mm-hmm.
or like in a magazine. When it's like you can see like someone who really appreciate Jimmy or someone really appreciate Eddie, and I feel like, yeah, Jimmy was important. Like Eddie was important. Even I hate when people are just saying like, "Oh, just did tapping." And it's like, no, it's not that.
Yeah,
It's not
there's
only
more
tapping.
to him.
Yeah, it's like listen to his stuff. Like that's not tapping only. Like I'm pretty sure like even if like it was new in the 80s or
Yeah.
70s, 80s, um, people would quickly be like, okay, cool, next. It's like, and that wasn't the case. And
He's
it's funny, like I just remember a band like you asked me like one of the main influence, and I totally forgot this one. One of my main influence, and it's because my father was listening to that band all the time, is Brian May from Queen. Like that's for me, like this guy is again underrated.
yeah.
Like is extremely underrated. Like is amazing. Is for me like he's like the alpha version of Buckethead.
Yeah.
It's like the first version. um, but it's like I don't know if you've seen like I just found this video like a couple of weeks ago. It's Brian May listening to a solo by Nuno Betancourt, like the solo from Get the Funk Out when he's just like sweeping and tapping,
Yeah.
and you see Brian May like doing is very like proper when he speaks English, and the very like that British side of him, and he's analyzing the solo. And normally, most of people are like, "Oh, it's fucking amazing. That's great." And him is just like analyzing everything. He's like, "Oh, listen to that part, and then listen to that part." And I was like, "That's fantastic." And you see, like, it's funny, like when you see like Brian May, people would like Brian May. People became like copies of Brian May. We all know, like, when you go to a show and you see one guy, he has the same haircut and he plays,
Yeah.
he wears exactly the same clothes, but they're not open, open-minded to other music style. When I'm sure, like Brian May, you make him listen to some uh, like Polyphia or like I don't know, like Black Dahlia Murder. I'm pretty sure this guy would appreciate it. He would
Mm-hmm.
find something and would be like, "Oh, that's amazing." And that's another thing about musician. I feel like it's normal to be kind of not jealous, but when you compare yourself, you start to become like a little bit bitter, like, oh, better than me. But you try to find a reason, being like, yeah, but your last 16 was off. It's like even if you just try to find something. When I feel like those famous guitar players we were mentioning, they're not like that. They kind of like, they feel like, oh, one thing I don't know what to do, challenging. It's like I'm gonna start to do it. And I feel like again, that's like those little things, those little details will make somebody a good guitar player and I don't like that term, but a famous guitar player that
Yeah.
people will remember. And those guys, they're part of it.
So to kind of put a wrap in this thing, and I'm not hopping off because I don't want to talk to you. My phone's getting ready to die, and I don't want to end this thing and then. So, for someone that has overcame all like incredible odds to make it from basically across the world to wind up being in a band to the level of Eclipsica, and then the crowning point of your career being on this podcast, of course. Do you have any words of wisdom or anything that you could say to an aspiring musician that wants to get into this, or even even if there was someone in a similar situation to yours?
I would say like don't listen to naysayers. Like that should be the main thing. Try to and always, that's something I do since I started to play guitar. I always have to, when I practice, I have to have fun. If I don't have fun, I won't do it. And it's like I think that the key, you need to have fun. You need to remember why you want to do it. Like I wanted to do music because I like what I hear on the radio or on the CDs, but I don't hear exactly what I want. So I want to make music and to listen to hear what I want to hear. But I would say like it's possible. Like honestly, like do like I said, like yeah, it sounds cliche, but do not let anyone tell you like, oh no, that's not possible. That's gonna be too hard. Try. Um, you know, you cannot succeed all the time, but you can fail all the time for sure. Like if you don't try, that's you won't make it. Like you won't again, you know, and you need to have like um something like doable. Like do not start to be like, I'm gonna be the best guitar in the world. You know, it's like and it's gonna be like this, that way, that way. It will never go the way you want.
Mm-hmm.
So just like instead of just looking forward and being like, I want to be here, I want to achieve that and this, sometimes look back and being like, oh, I've completed that. That's pretty cool. It's not easy. Like we all want more and more. But I would say like if I did it, everybody can do it. You know, it's like I'm not special or anything. You know, it's like I come from like you know, a country in the world where music is not like in the culture, when English is not the language, and you have to accept it. You want to make it, you need to speak English. You need to come in the US because that's where no, there's some good guitar. Yeah, of course, but that's the industry. The industry is here. You need to be here, and it's like it's possible. Like it won't be easy. Like it won't be like just like going like this. It will be like ups and downs, but it's doable. You know, and it's like treat your music career the way you would do, you know, like if you want to become a doctor, if you want to become a lawyer, you have to be serious every day. You cannot go to med school and just being like, oh, I need to learn to do an IV. Nah, it's okay. I will learn another day. No, you need to do this. You need to go through stuff that you don't want to. You need to learn. It's not necessary, but at least learn a little bit of music theory because it will help you. You don't know. Maybe one day, like you have a gig and just knowing music theory will give you $100. So it's like, yeah, it's like just be ready to sacrifice a lot of things. That's something I didn't mention, but I have to sacrifice almost everything. Like I don't see my family. Like I see my family once every like 2 or 3 years, and it's only for 10 days. I'm not complaining about it because I chose it. You know, it's like it's me who decided to do this. But that's something you have to sacrifice. You have to be willing to sacrifice things. You know, to be like it's time consuming. You know, it's like that's the way it is. You know, it's like you work nine to five job. You are paying if you work from 9 to 5. You're being paid. When you do music, it's gonna be like 2 a.m. You're still gonna work on some songs and stuff like that. You won't get paid for that but and getting upset about it won't change anything. So just be ready, like to it has to be a passion. You know, it's like I feel like nowadays we have a lot of people who want to be famous, and then they decide, okay, through what medium, you know, or maybe TV, or maybe acting, or maybe like
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
When all the guys we like as musician or even actors, or it can be for everything, being famous was a result of their hard work. And I feel like that's nowadays like we try to tell people like, okay, you are in A and you try to reach point B, and people just want point B. Like I see that with my students, and I try to tell them the journey to go there is as important. Like that's who define who you are and everything. I give the same advice when I was a kid and I was asking people when I'm like, everybody's different, and it made me upset when people are saying this. I'm like, come on, just give me an advice. Tell me how you did it. And it's true. There are as many ways to do it as there are people. And it's just like you need to take from some people. Like do not just be like this person did that way, I'm gonna do it that way. It's it's really like it's tempting to go on YouTube and be like 10 steps to become like an amazing guitar player. But you know, it's tempting, but you see like a video is 5 minutes. Really? That's it's like no. And you know, it's like we all have different ways, you know, to do it. And sometimes maybe you would become like one of the best and you won't do anything with it. While a guy, you know, who is not as good as you will make it. And it's just like, you know, now music is not only you play and people just like, okay, you play, come here. Now you have to be good at marketing. You have to be good at stuff like that, which I'm not. That's why I like being in a band because I'm like, I don't like talking to people like usually. Like, you know, it's like it's not my thing. You know, it's like I'm like I you know Or like talking about gear, you talk to gear about me. I don't give a shit about gear. Like for me, it's just like give me a guitar, put the amp on, give me a distortion, and that's it. Like I'm impressed by people being like, hey, do you hear like the mids in that mix? I'm like, I don't care. It's like, just make me play.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
you know, it's not anymore doing on your own. I feel like let's do it together, and you need to find people with you that you can match with. And I feel like that's what you hear about newer bands. You know, it's like guys who are like, I'm good at that, and they decide to be like Misha Menchur. I feel like is the best example for that.
Hmm.
Like he was able to be around people that were good. I mean, he's super talented, obviously, but they all like find a way to be like, it works for us. It's not me on my own, and I would just like try to no, it's we're a team. We're gonna try to make it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, I feel like it's never like you never had like a bad, you know. It's always like you try with bands, you always have something coming out of it. You know, it's
Hmm.
like never happened. You know, to people being like, "Oh, we played for 20 years. Oh, did you get any like achievement?" No, you know, no, none. We just play in the same pub every night. No, it's like it doesn't really happen. So I would say, yeah, I would tell people also like not to hesitate to ask questions to famous people. Like I have the chance to now that I'm endorsed by a guitar company, ask advice to again who's one of my favorite guitar player, Ron Thal, you know, Bumblefoot.
Yep.
Those guys are extremely nice. Anytime I ask him advice on anything, he's always the first one getting back to me, being like, instead of being like, oh, there's a newer generation, maybe you want to take my spot. No, not like that at all. Like, hey, I'm gonna give you some advice. You know, I hope it will work for you. And I feel like that's something that people like need to do. Like, don't act like a fanboy, but just being like, hey, give me some advice. You know, I'm not gonna copy you, but you know, it's like I'm there, I'm stuck. Just give me some, you know, insights. So I feel like that's when you combine everything, you can probably do something. Hopefully.
Well, you inspired me today.
Hey, thank you very much. You and same. You know, when I see you with your podcast and everything, you know, it's like many times I'm like, oh, I should do a podcast, but then I'm like, nah, we'll be bad. So it's like even same for you. You know, you had to start somewhere. You know, it's
Yeah.
like I'm pretty sure you didn't think about like, oh, that, but already so many people are doing a podcast. You know, it's like that's what I was thinking. I'm like, why people will listen to mine? And you know, it's like that's something I still have to work on. So it's like, you know, it's like you're inspiring probably people too. Like you don't know, but maybe there's one guy, you know, in Tennessee who's listening to
Yeah.
you and he was like, hey, when I'm gonna be a big guy, I'm gonna do that. You know, it's like you never know. You never know.
He's probably like, I can do better than that asshole.
Oh, you have to say that. You always have to be like, I'm gonna be better than this asshole. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
like you know, you always, you know. But yeah, no, it's like it was. Thank you very much for having me. You know, it was a pleasure talking music. I love talking about music with people. That's
Yeah, we're
something that,
definitely gonna have to get you back on here and sometime in the very near future.
man, anytime. You know, it's like you can. I don't know if the guy told me, but in the band, I'm the one who never sleeps. I'm always up. You know, it's like, you know, I'm always like, because you know, and I always do stuff about music. You know, it's like so talking about music with someone. You know, you probably know even more so than me. You know, it's like about music, especially since you know you meet so many people. That would be great to have some of your like stories because I'm pretty sure like sometimes stories are just also inspiring. You know,
Yeah.
when people.
Like I said, man, you inspired me today. Like I almost like want to pack up my shit and like move somewhere else.
you know, you know what? You know, it's like it's doable. You know, it's like I wouldn't do it now because I'm 32. I'm thinking now. People tell me like, let's move to Japan. I'm like, nope. That's it. But you know, it's like you can do it with all the stuff. You know, it's like when I'm impressed. You know, like people being like, I'm gonna start a podcast. You know, it's like yeah, there is. I mean, yeah, maybe it won't work. Maybe, but you know, it's like if you start thinking about that, you don't do anything. You
Yeah.
know, and that's. I feel like you know, it's like that's the thing. You know, it's like that how people like when you tell them like, hey, how did you become famous? Well, I persisted. You know, it's like, and at some point, you know, people will get tired of me being around, being like, okay, they're giving some work to do, and you know, it's like it's gonna stop bothering us. And I feel like that's the way it is. You know, it's like, um, I mean, I listen to some of your podcasts, and you know, it's like you can clearly hear. You know, it's like you always get better, whatever you do. It's like if every day you do something, I mean, I never heard about someone regressing. You know, it's like I do guitar every day and I'm getting worse and worse. No, you can only get better.
Yeah,
That's not
exactly.
possible. You know, that's not possible. I never heard somebody saying this to me. You know, it's like you know, it's like I used to be able to sweep and you know doing some legato, and I've been working for a month every day, and now I cannot do it. No, it's not possible. That's that's not possible.
That's great.
So, but yeah, no, thank you for having me. It was great talking, and anytime, I would love talking about like random music stories because you know it's like I so many things that I would want to say, but I'm like, oh, I'm going everywhere. I'm saying one subject and then I go everywhere, and I'm
Yeah.
like,
Well, Vic, thank you so much for coming on.
thank you, Bill.
Like I said, we're gonna be in touch. I want to definitely get you back on here,
Ah,
and yeah, everybody, go check out Eclipsica. Where can people
yeah.
find you on social medias?
So we're on Instagram, on Spotify. I took a break from Instagram for like the reason I told you, but I will probably be back there. That's you know you probably gonna be able to find my Instagram through the band Instagram. We have some. We just came back from like a big show from the Incarceration Festival. You know, it was amazing. Now I guess we're gonna try to play around LA. Maybe like you know, Arizona would be like the further we go. But we try to just concentrate on playing like a lot of shows, getting some automatisms, you know, back. And probably like getting some new jam, you know, going studio and if we can having some, you know, like a new music video because you know we like to play. That's our stuff. And yeah, hopefully, you know, like soon enough we're gonna have some good material like to present to the audience.
Awesome. Well, I'm all ears. I'm waiting.
I'm waiting to.
All right, man. Thank you so much for coming on. And like I said, I'll be in touch.
No problem. Anytime. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man. See ya.
See you.